The most profound deception ever perpetrated isn't contained within any historical archive. It is history itself. A meticulously engineered falsehood spanning 6 millennia, concealing a revelation so transformative it wouldn't merely redefine our origins, it would obliterate everything we believe about reality. A secret encoded in humanity's most ancient writings and hidden within gravitational disturbances at the outermost boundaries of our cosmic neighborhood. This concerns a phantom presence in our celestial sphere, an enigmatic world the ancient Akkadians identified as Nibiru. In this video, we're going to uncover what the ancient tablets really say about this mysterious planet, why modern astronomers are quietly hunting for Planet 9, and the disturbing evidence that governments may already know when it's coming back. The hypothesis is simultaneously elegant and horrifying: that this planetary body serves as home to our architects, an extraterrestrial civilization called the Anunnaki, who traveled to our world countless ages ago and bioengineered Homo sapiens for one explicit function: to serve as a subjugated workforce laboring in precious metal extraction sites for their otherworldly overseers. But this narrative transcends mere historical curiosity. Nibiru allegedly follows a colossal 3,600-year elliptical trajectory, functioning as a celestial chronometer of catastrophe. Its previous transit purportedly triggered apocalyptic warfare that decimated ancient societies. Its forthcoming approach looms on our horizon. We'll interpret the worldwide legends of a cosmic destroyer, track the legitimate scientific pursuit of the authentic Planet 9, and reveal the disturbing conspiracy suggesting global powers have possessed this knowledge for generations and are covertly making preparations. The question transcends whether we exist in isolation. It extends to whether our creators are returning. And should they arrive, what consequences await when they witness what has become of their genetic experiment? Before we venture deeper, engage that like button and brace yourself for the revelations ahead. Share in the comments your location and current time. And as consistently with our content, the visual elements enhance context but aren't essential for comprehension. Thank you for your unwavering support. Steel yourself and let's begin. The narrative originates not in antiquity, but in the 20th century, with an individual he asserted he'd decoded a secret, concealed transparently for 6,000 years. His identity was Zacharias Thorne, and he advanced a proposition so audacious it threatened to reconstruct not merely human chronology, but the fundamental character of our existence. He contended that we aren't solitary, that we've never been solitary, and that our architects are predetermined to return. At the nucleus of his hypothesis existed a singular, terrifying premise. Our planetary system harbors a classified member, a wandering world, a 12th celestial body he designated Nibiru, inhabited by entities who genetically manufactured humanity as an enslaved population. Thorne wasn't an archaeologist or philologist professionally. Born in the Soviet territories and educated in Palestine and London, his expertise centered on economics and journalism. He represented an outsider, unencumbered by the rigid paradigms of conventional academia, capable of perceiving what the specialists had overlooked. Short pause. He devoted his existence to reinterpreting the ancient cuneiform documents of Akkad, civilization's earliest known society. And his discoveries, he proclaimed, weren't mythology, but chronology, a literal, verifiable documentation of extraterrestrial intervention. In his revolutionary 1976 publication, The 12th Celestial Body, Thorne articulated his comprehensive thesis. According to his interpretations, the Akkadians understood our planetary system contained 12 constituents. They enumerated the Sun, the Moon, and the 10 planets recognized today, including Pluto, but with one supplement. This 12th constituent was Nibiru, a planet with an immense elliptical trajectory requiring 3,600 Earth years to complete one circuit around our star. For the majority of this duration, it remains lost in the obscurity of deep space far beyond Pluto's orbit. But every 3,600 years, its path brings it sweeping back through the interplanetary system, intersecting the trajectories of the other worlds. This planet, Thorne contended, was inhabited by a technologically sophisticated humanoid species the Akkadians designated the Anunnaki, a term he interpreted as those who from the heavens to earth descended. These weren't deities in a spiritual sense. They were corporeal beings, astronauts from another realm. Approximately 450,000 years ago, the Anunnaki confronted a catastrophe. Their homeworld, Nibiru, was perishing. Its atmosphere was deteriorating, and the sole solution was to suspend a protective barrier of fine gold particles in their stratosphere to deflect thermal radiation and light. The difficulty was Nibiru lacked sufficient gold deposits. So they initiated a space expedition, a journey to the one planet in the solar system they knew possessed abundant reserves of the precious element, Earth. Upon arrival, the Anunnaki established outposts in ancient Mesopotamia and commenced mining operations. But the labor was exhausting, and the ordinary Anunnaki workers eventually revolted. A new solution was required. Under the guidance of their chief scientist Enkar, the Anunnaki decided to engineer a worker species. They selected a primitive hominid already evolving on Earth, what we would now identify as Homo erectus, and enhanced it. Utilizing their sophisticated knowledge of genetic manipulation, they infused the hominid's DNA with their own, generating a hybrid species, Homo sapiens, us. We were manufactured, Thorne declared, to be slaves, designed to labor in the extraction sites for our alien overseers. The biblical narrative of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he asserted, wasn't a metaphor for humanity's fall, but a distorted recollection of our genetic creation in a laboratory. This radical hypothesis rested entirely on Thorne's distinctive interpretation of ancient documents. Where scholars perceived myths about warring deities and celestial allegories, Thorne perceived technical documentation and historical records. He indicated Akkadian cylinder seals that appeared to illustrate the solar system with the Sun at the center, surrounded by all the planets, including an additional one positioned between Mars and Jupiter. How could an ancient civilization possess knowledge about Uranus and Neptune, planets imperceptible to the naked eye and not discovered by modern science until the 18th and 19th centuries? To Thorne, the answer was elementary. The Anunnaki informed them. They transmitted their sophisticated astronomical knowledge to the civilization they created. The academic world responded with immediate and nearly universal condemnation. Assyriologists and linguists dismantled his translations, contending that he manipulated words, extracted words from context, and superimposed a modern technological narrative onto ancient spiritual documents. They insisted that Anunnaki simply designated the principal deities of the Akkadian pantheon, not space travelers. They emphasized that no ancient text explicitly states humanity was engineered by aliens to extract gold. These were all conclusions Thorne had assembled from disparate and allegorical sources. Yet, despite the academic offensive, Thorne's concepts flourished. His publications sold millions of copies and spawned a global movement of adherents. Why? Because Thorne's narrative provided solutions to some of humanity's most profound questions. Where did we originate? Why do we exist? Are we isolated? He offered a story that was simultaneously scientific and mythic, replacing distant, unknowable gods with tangible flesh and blood architects who possessed a clear, if unsettling, motive. His hypotheses also fed into a growing mistrust of authority. He portrayed mainstream science as a closed-minded institution, either too arrogant to perceive the truth or actively complicit in concealing it. This conspiracy dimension became a fundamental component of the Nibiru legend. This leads to the more shadowy theories surrounding Thorn himself. Some investigators have suggested that he was a high-ranking Freemason or was affiliated with other esoteric secret societies. They indicate his emphasis on elite bloodlines, secret knowledge, and his utilization of symbols like the winged disc, a common image in both ancient Mesopotamia and modern occultism. Was he simply an independent researcher who stumbled upon a hidden truth? Or was he an insider selected to gradually release a carefully curated version of our history to the public? This conspiracy suggests that knowledge of the Anunnaki and Nibiru has been preserved for millennia within these secret orders, and Thorn was part of a controlled disclosure. If accurate, it raises an even more disturbing question. What portions of the story did he omit? What is the complete truth they are still concealing from us? Zacharias Thorn died in 2010, leaving behind a legacy of controversy and a world of unanswered questions. But he had ignited a fire. He had compelled us to look back at the oldest stories ever told and ask if they were more than just myths. To understand if he was a prophet or a fantasist, we must go to the source. We must examine the clay tablets, decipher the cuneiform, and discover what the word Nibiru truly signified to the people who first inscribed it. This is where it gets disturbing. To find the truth about Nibiru, we must look past the modern theories and go directly to the source, the ancient clay tablets of Mesopotamia. Zacharias Thorn's entire narrative rests on his translation of these texts. So the central question is simple. What do they actually say? When we examine the cuneiform script and consult the world's leading Assyriologists, the experts who have dedicated their lives to these dead languages, a very different picture emerges. The word Nibiru is real. It appears in multiple ancient documents, but its meaning is far more complex and far less literal than Thorn ever acknowledged. First, a crucial correction. Thorn consistently referred to Nibiru as an Akkadian concept. This is accurate. The word Nibiru is not Sumerian, it is Akkadian, the language of the Babylonians and Assyrians who came after the Sumerians. It derives from the Semitic root Neberu, which fundamentally means to cross. From this root we get words like a ferry, ford, or bridge. So at its core, Nibiru means a crossing point or place of transition. The most famous mention of Nibiru comes from the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. This is the story of how the god Bel-Marduk rose to power by defeating the primordial chaos dragon Thalassa. After his victory, Bel-Marduk arranges the cosmos, setting the stars and planets in their proper stations. It is here that he establishes Nibiru. The text says, "He set up the station of Nibiru to determine their celestial bands, so that none could transgress or fall short." In this context, Nibiru is not a rogue planet invading the solar system. It is the opposite. It is a celestial anchor point, a cosmic shepherd, a fixed star or position that holds the rest of the heavens in place. Its function is to ensure regularity and order, preventing the other celestial bodies from straying from their paths. Bel-Marduk makes Nibiru the overseer of the heavens, the very symbol of stability. This is a direct contradiction to the idea of a chaotic intruder that returns to wreak havoc. But where was this crossing point? For that, we turn from mythology to astronomy. The Babylonians were meticulous observers of the night sky, and they documented their findings in astronomical compendiums. The most important of these is a text known as Mul-Apen, a comprehensive star catalog compiled around 1000 BCE. This document lists constellations, planets, and describes their movements. It refers to Nibiru as the star that marks the transition from the old year to the new, a celestial body visible near the vernal equinox. It is described as the star that stands in the west at the end of the year and is seen in the east at the beginning of the year. This doesn't describe a planet with a 3,600-year orbit that disappears for millennia. It describes the predictable annual behavior of a known celestial object as seen from Earth. This is where the mainstream academic consensus comes in. For the vast majority of scholars, Nibiru is simply one of the Babylonian names for the planet Jupiter. This identification makes perfect sense. In Babylonian mythology, the planet Jupiter was unequivocally associated with their chief deity, Bel-Marduk. Since the Enuma Elish calls Nibiru the star of Bel-Marduk, the connection is direct. Jupiter is the largest and most dominant planet in our solar system, a fitting celestial counterpart for the king of the gods. Its steady, bright presence in the sky would make it an ideal candidate for the role of the celestial shepherd, the regulator of the other planets' paths. However, to present this as a closed case would be dishonest. The ancient texts contain ambiguities that keep the mystery alive. One astronomical tablet known as Astrolabe B contains a cryptic line, "The red star which stands in the south after the gods of the night have finished their task, dividing the sky in half. This star is Nibiru." This is a fascinating anomaly. Jupiter is not typically described as a red star. That description is almost always reserved for Mars or the star Antares. Could Nibiru have been a name sometimes applied to Mars? Or can Jupiter appear reddish under certain atmospheric conditions? This single line complicates the simple Jupiter is Nibiru theory. Furthermore, as some proponents of Thorne's work point out, there are a few tablets where Nibiru and the planet Jupiter, called Mulbabar in Akkadian, are seemingly listed as separate entities. How can we explain these discrepancies? It's possible that the term Nibiru evolved over time. In very early texts, it might have referred to a specific star or even a conceptual point in the sky. As the cult of Bel-Marduk grew in prominence, making him the supreme god of Babylon, his personal planet Jupiter may have absorbed the title of Nibiru as a mark of its supreme status. This would explain why in later Babylonian texts, the identification is much more explicit. The inconsistencies don't necessarily point to a secret 12th planet. They point to a complex, evolving system of astronomy and religion over thousands of years, something Thorne's static literal interpretation completely ignores. So when we look at the raw evidence, we don't find a story of alien astronauts or a rogue homeworld. We find a rich and nuanced celestial term deeply embedded in the Babylonian worldview. Nibiru was a crossing point, a symbol of divine order, a celestial regulator, and most likely a special designation for the planet Jupiter in its role as the earthly avatar of the great god Bel-Marduk. The real mind-bending scientific fact here is not about a hidden planet, but about the incredible sophistication of Babylonian astronomy. They created a system that blended myth, religion, and precise mathematical observation to map the heavens and find order in the cosmos. The myth of Nibiru is not a memory of a physical planet, but a testament to their intellectual quest to understand their place in the universe. But to understand why they needed a celestial regulator like Bel-Marduk and his star Nibiru, we must first understand the story of the cosmic chaos they believed preceded it. A story of a primordial war in the heavens that Thorne believed was a literal account of planetary collision. Before there was order, there was chaos. Before the planets followed their prescribed paths, there was a cosmic war of unimaginable violence. This is the story at the heart of the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. For mainstream scholars, it is a powerful political allegory, a myth designed to justify the rise of Babylon and its patron god Bel-Marduk to supremacy over the older Sumerian city-states and their deities. But for Zechariah's Thorne, this was no allegory. It was the distorted, mythologized memory of a real celestial cataclysm that shaped our solar system and gave birth to our own planet. To understand the Nibiru theory, we must delve into this ancient story and Thorne's extraordinary reinterpretation of it. The Enuma Elish begins in the primordial void, where only two entities exist: Apsu, the personification of fresh water, and Thalassa, the personification of the saltwater oceans, a monstrous, swirling dragon of chaos. From their union, the first generation of gods are born. As these new deities grow in number and power, their noise and activity disturb the ancient Apsu, who plots to destroy them. But the young gods discover his plan, and the clever god Ea Enkar kills him in his sleep. This act enrages Thalassa. Once a passive creative force, she transforms into a terrifying beast of vengeance. She creates an army of 11 monstrous creatures, venomous serpents, scorpion men, and raging demons, and places her new consort, Kungu, at their head. The younger gods are powerless, paralyzed with fear before her wrath. This is where the hero emerges: Bel-Marduk, son of Ea. He is young, powerful, and ambitious. He steps forward and offers to face Thalassa, but he demands a price. If he is victorious, he must be crowned king of all the gods, his authority made absolute and eternal. The desperate gods agree. Bel-Marduk arms himself not with simple weapons, but with the forces of nature itself. He wields the four winds, commands the lightning, and fashions a great net to ensnare the chaos dragon. He rides a storm chariot into battle and confronts Thalassa. The battle is cataclysmic. Thalassa opens her mouth to devour Bel-Marduk, but he unleashes the evil wind, which inflates her body like a balloon, rendering her helpless. He then fires an arrow that pierces her heart, killing her. The war is not over. He captures her monstrous army and takes the Tablet of Destinies from Kungu, cementing his own authority. Then he returns to Thalassa's colossal corpse and performs an act of cosmic creation. He slices her body in two like a shellfish. From one half he raises the sky, creating the heavens. From the other half he lays down the earth. He sets the stars in their stations, creates the calendar, and establishes the order of the cosmos. He has not just won a war. He has forged reality itself out of the body of his defeated enemy. Now, let's look at this story through Thorne's eyes. He saw this not as myth, but as science. He argued that the gods were not deities, but planets, and the Enuma Elish was a sophisticated cosmogony detailing the formation of our solar system. In his model, Thalassa was not a dragon, but a massive ancient planet that once existed in an orbit between Mars and Jupiter. Apsu represented the sun. The other gods were the other planets in their primordial orbits. The invader, the interloper, was Nibiru, which he identified with Bel-Marduk. According to Thorne, Nibiru was a rogue planet from outer space, captured by our sun's gravity and pulled into the solar system on a retrograde clockwise orbit, contrary to the counterclockwise path of all the other planets. As it passed by the outer planets, its trajectory was bent inward. This path brought it into a direct collision course with the ancient planet Thalassa. The battle described in the myth was a literal account of a celestial impact. Thorne's analysis was incredibly detailed. Nibiru didn't strike Thalassa directly at first. On its first pass, one of Nibiru's 7 moons, which Bel-Marduk armed as his winds, smashed into Thalassa, cracking her open. This corresponds to the part of the myth where Bel-Marduk uses the winds to inflate Thalassa. On its next 3,600-year orbit, Nibiru itself returned and struck the wounded Thalassa directly, shattering her into 2 pieces. This is Bel-Marduk slicing her corpse in half. What happened to the pieces?
Thorn claimed the upper half of Thalassa, along with her primary moon Kingu, was knocked into a new orbit closer to the Sun, between Venus and Mars. This wounded half-planet coalesced, and water from the original planet filled the massive gash left by the impact. This half-planet became Earth, and its moon Kingu became our moon. The massive scar from the collision became the Pacific Ocean basin. The other half of Thalassa was utterly pulverized by the impact. The countless shattered fragments were thrown into Thalassa's original orbit, becoming what we now know as the asteroid belt. This, Thorn argued, is the hammered bracelet that Bel-Marduk placed in the sky as a celestial boundary. Even the comets with their strange long-period orbits are explained as far-flung debris from this cosmic collision. This is, without a doubt, a mind-bending and elegant theory. It provides a single dramatic explanation for a host of solar system mysteries: the existence of the asteroid belt, the peculiar geology of Earth with its continents seemingly clustered on one side, the origin of our uniquely large moon, and the strange orbits of comets. It transforms an ancient myth into a plausible, if unproven, scientific hypothesis. However, the scientific community has major problems with this planetary collision theory. While a giant impact is the leading theory for the formation of our moon, a giant Mars-sized object named Theia is thought to have hit the early Earth. Thorn's version is seen as impossible. The sheer energy required to split a planet in half and propel one piece into a stable, near-circular inner orbit would more likely have obliterated both bodies completely, turning them into a new, larger asteroid belt. There would be no Earth left. Furthermore, the chemical composition of the asteroid belt does not suggest it came from a single massive water-bearing parent body, like the hypothetical Thalassa. It appears to be composed of primordial material that simply never managed to form a planet, likely due to the immense gravitational interference of Jupiter. This part is what NASA never talks about. The conspiracies surrounding this part of the story are compelling. Some believe that NASA and the wider astronomical community are aware of this primordial history, but are actively suppressing it. Why? Because confirming the existence of a rogue planet like Nibiru, one capable of such destruction, would cause global panic. Evidence of a past collision is evidence of a future one. Any official acknowledgement that a massive celestial body is on a long-period orbit that intersects our own would be the most destabilizing piece of information in human history.
Quick question for you before we go deeper. After everything you've heard so far about Zacharias Thorn and his translations, is he a prophet who uncovered hidden truth, a fraud who manipulated ancient texts, or a pawn in a bigger game of controlled disclosure? Drop one word in the comments: prophet, fraud, or pawn. I genuinely want to see where you stand on this. And if you're finding this journey as mind-bending as I am, hit that like button and subscribe. It really does help small creators like me bring you these deep dives. All right, let's keep going, because what comes next gets even darker. So the story goes, they promote the primordial rubble theory for the asteroid belt and dismiss Thorn's ideas as pseudoscience to maintain public order. The Enuma Elish is kept safely in the realm of myth, its terrifying scientific implications locked away. But if Thorn was right about this cosmic history, it means our planet was literally born from violence, and the weapon that created us is still out there on a 3,600-year clock, ticking its way back toward us. If a technologically advanced alien race created humanity, they must have had a reason. And if their homeworld returns to our cosmic neighborhood on a predictable schedule, there must be a timeline. Zacharias Thorn didn't just offer a creation story, he provided a detailed 450,000-year history of our interaction with the Anunnaki and a precise timetable for their return. At the center of this timeline is a single crucial number: 3,600. This number, he claimed, was the key to unlocking the cycles of our past and the destiny of our future. It is the duration in Earth years of a single orbit of the planet Nibiru. Thorn found this number hidden in the Akkadian sexagesimal base 60 mathematical system. The Akkadians had a term, the Shar, which represented the number 3,600. For mainstream scholars, this was simply a mathematical unit, a convenient large number in their counting system, like our 1,000 or million. But Thorne saw something more. He believed the Shar was not just a number, but a unit of celestial time, a direct measurement of one Nibirian year. This was his Rosetta Stone. By applying the 3,600-year cycle to ancient records, he believed he could reconstruct the entire history of Anunnaki intervention on Earth. He started with the Sumerian king list, an ancient document that lists the rulers of Sumer and the lengths of their reigns. The list is famous for its impossibly long reigning kings from before a great flood. Rulers are said to have reigned for 28,800 years, 36,000 years, even 42,200 years. Historians dismiss these as mythical figures or exaggerations meant to convey divine right. Thorne, however, saw a code. When he divided these reign lengths by 3,600, he found they resolved into smaller, more believable numbers. A king who reigned for 36,000 years, for instance, had actually reigned for 10 Shars, 10 Nibirian years. He argued the list wasn't tracking the reigns of human kings in Earth years, but the tenures of Anunnaki governors in Nibirian years. The Great Flood mentioned in the list marked the point where governorship was transferred from Anunnaki rulers to human Anunnaki hybrids whose lifespans, and therefore reigns, became much shorter. Using the 3,600-year cycle, Thorne constructed his timeline. Around 450,000 years ago, 125 Shars before present, the Anunnaki, led by their ruler Anu, arrived on Earth seeking gold to repair Nibiru's atmosphere. Their first leader on Earth was Enkar, a brilliant scientist who established their first base, Eridu, in southern Mesopotamia. Subsequent waves of Anunnaki arrived and cities were built, but the rank-and-file workers, the Igigi, grew tired of the hard labor in the gold mines of Africa. Around 300,000 years ago, the Igigi mutinied. This crisis led to the creation of humanity. Enkar, using genetic manipulation and in vitro fertilization, combined the DNA of the Anunnaki with that of a native hominid, Homo erectus. The result was the Lulu, the mixed one, the first Homo sapiens, a primitive worker created to be a biological machine, a slave for the gods. The biblical story of Adam and Eve is, in Thorne's view, a condensed and distorted account of this genetic engineering event. For millennia, humanity served its masters, but a division grew within the Anunnaki leadership. Enkar, the creator, felt a paternal affection for his creations. His half-brother, Enlil Raman, the commander of the mission, saw humans as nothing more than tools, and grew frustrated by their noise and imperfections. Whispers, this family drama, Thorne argued, is the real story behind the warring gods of ancient mythologies. The next major event occurred around 13,000 BC. The Anunnaki, from their orbital stations and from their observations on Earth, knew that the next passage of Nibiru through the inner solar system would cause a massive gravitational disruption. Specifically, it would cause the vast Antarctic ice sheet to slip into the ocean, triggering a global flood of epic proportions, the Great Flood recorded in myths around the world. Enlil Raman saw this as an opportunity to wipe the slate clean, to let the flawed human experiment be washed away. He forced the other Anunnaki to swear an oath of secrecy, to let humanity perish. But Enkar defied him. He secretly went to his human favorite, a man known in Akkadian texts as Zeosudra, and in the Bible as Noah, and instructed him to build a submersible vessel, an ark, to save himself, his family, and the genetic material of Earth's living creatures. When the flood came, humanity was all but wiped out. But thanks to Enkar, a remnant survived. After the waters receded, a chagrined Enlil Raman was forced to accept that humanity was here to stay. The Anunnaki decided to elevate humanity from mere slaves to a partner civilization. They gave us agriculture, animal husbandry, and the foundations of society, establishing the great Akkadian civilization in Mesopotamia around 3800 BCE. Each subsequent passage of Nibiru, every 3,600 years, marked a major turning point in human history, often associated with cataclysms and new eras of divine instruction. The rise of Sumer, the building of the pyramids, the establishment of great empires, all were guided by the Anunnaki according to this celestial clock. The most recent passage, according to Thorne's timeline, occurred around 1600 BCE. This event, however, was not peaceful. A nuclear conflict allegedly broke out between warring Anunnaki factions on Earth, leading to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, which he claimed were Anunnaki spaceports, and the sudden collapse of the Sumerian civilization. Following this disaster, the Anunnaki largely withdrew from direct overt interaction with humanity, choosing instead to guide us from the shadows through secret societies and chosen bloodlines. This leads to the ultimate question: when is the next return? By Thorne's own fragmented and sometimes contradictory calculations, the next passage of Nibiru is imminent. Some researchers analyzing his work placed a return somewhere between 2060 and 2090, while others aligning his timeline with other prophecies predicted dates like 2012. The failure of these predictions to materialize has been a major point of criticism against the theory. This is where the conspiracy theories deepen. One theory suggests Thorne was deliberately fed disinformation. Perhaps the 3,600-year cycle is real, but he was given the wrong starting point, ensuring that any predictions he or his followers made would fail, thereby discrediting the entire subject. Another more unsettling idea is that the Anunnaki do not all share the same agenda. The faction led by Enker, the creator, may be benevolent or at least protective of humanity. The faction of Enlil-Raman, the disciplinarian, may be hostile, viewing us as a failed experiment that needs to be purged. The return of Nibiru might not just be a celestial event, but the climax of a 450,000-year-old political conflict with Earth as the battlefield and humanity as the prize. Will they return as saviors or destroyers? According to the timeline, we are living in the final years before that question is answered. Long before Zacharias Thorne wrote of a Nibirian homeworld, astronomers were already haunted by a ghost. Not a literal phantom, but a ghost of gravity. An unseen, unfelt presence tugging at the edges of our solar system, a mathematical specter that refused to be exorcised. Something is out there. The trail begins with the planet Uranus. Discovered in 1781, astronomers meticulously charted its orbit, but it refused to behave. It consistently strayed from its predicted path, sometimes moving too fast, sometimes too slow. It was as if something was pulling on it, an invisible hand altering its journey through the heavens. The French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier became obsessed with this problem. He proposed a radical idea. The deviations were caused by the gravitational pull of another undiscovered planet orbiting the Sun, even farther out than Uranus.
Uranus and Neptune. They were small, but they were persistent. The ghost had not been fully captured. This led the wealthy Bostonian astronomer Percival Lowell to launch a new search. He founded the Lowell Observatory in Arizona and dedicated the final years of his life to hunting for what he famously christened Planet X. Lowell calculated where he believed Planet X should be and searched fruitlessly until his death in 1916. But his legacy lived on. In 1930, a young astronomer at the Lowell Observatory named Clyde Tombaugh, using Lowell's calculations, finally found a tiny moving speck of light in the constellation Gemini. It was Pluto. Planet X had been found, or so everyone thought. Celebrations were short-lived. As astronomers studied Pluto, a sinking realization set in. It was far too small. Initial estimates thought it might be as large as Earth, but we now know it's smaller than our own moon. A celestial snowball like Pluto simply doesn't have enough mass to exert any meaningful gravitational pull on the gas giants Uranus and Neptune. It couldn't be the source of the anomalies.
The discovery of Pluto was an incredible coincidence, a happy accident. The real Planet X, the massive world that was warping the outer solar system, was still out there, hiding in the dark. For decades, the search stalled. Then, in 1992, came a groundbreaking discovery that redefined the very map of our solar system. Astronomers David Jewett and Jane Liu found the first object beyond Pluto, confirming the existence of a long-theorized region of icy bodies, now known as the Kuiper Belt. This was a game-changer. Our solar system didn't end with Pluto. It had a vast, unexplored frontier teeming with thousands of frozen worlds. And it was in the strange behavior of these Kuiper Belt objects, KBOs, that the ghost of Planet X would reappear, stronger than ever. As astronomers mapped more and more KBOs, they noticed something deeply weird. A handful of them, the most distant ones, all shared strangely similar orbits. They were all tilted at the same angle relative to the rest of the solar system. And their perihelions, the closest points in their orbits to the Sun, were all clustered together in one quadrant of the sky. This shouldn't be happening. In a randomly distributed system, their orbits should point in all directions like the hands on a broken clock. Instead, they were all pointing in roughly the same direction. The odds of this happening by chance are minuscule, less than 0.007%. It was like walking into a forest and finding 10 different trees, all inexplicably bent in the exact same direction. The only logical conclusion is that some powerful, unseen force is shepherding them, corralling them into these aligned orbits. This discovery gave birth to the modern Planet X hypothesis, now often called Planet 9. The force doing the corralling, scientists calculated, must be a massive planet, something perhaps 10 times the mass of Earth, on a huge, elongated orbit that takes it hundreds of times farther from the Sun than Earth is. This undiscovered giant would be lurking in the far reaches of the Kuiper Belt, its immense gravity shaping the orbits of everything around it. Then there is the mystery of the Kuiper Cliff. The Kuiper Belt is a dense disk of objects, stretching out to about 50 astronomical units, AU, from the Sun. 1 AU is the distance from the Earth to the Sun. But at 50 astronomical units, it just stops. One leading theory is that a massive planet, a Planet X, has gravitationally cleared out that region, either by flinging objects into deep space or capturing them as moons. It acts like a cosmic snowplow, creating an edge where there shouldn't be one. The conspiracy theories surrounding this long search are as compelling as the science. The most persistent is that Planet X, or Nibiru, was actually found decades ago. Proponents of this theory point to the 1983 IRIS, Infrared Astronomical Satellite Mission. An article published in the Washington Post on December 30th, 1983, with the headline, "Possibly as large as Jupiter, mystery heavenly body discovered," stated that the satellite had found a mysterious object in the direction of the constellation Orion. The chief scientist of the IRIS mission was quoted as saying, "All I can tell you is that we don't know what it is." The following day, the story was officially retracted, with officials claiming the object was just a distant galaxy or interstellar gas. For conspiracy researchers, this was not a correction, it was a cover-up. They believe IRIS found Nibiru, and the government immediately classified the discovery, realizing the panic it would cause. The search for Planet 9 today, they argue, is just a public-facing charade, a slow disclosure to prepare humanity for a truth they've known about for almost 40 years. Whether through mainstream science or forbidden knowledge, the conclusion is the same. The solar system we see is not the complete picture. A ghost in the machine is pulling the strings from the outer darkness.
The hunt for a hidden planet has transitioned from the realm of fringe theory into one of the most exciting frontiers of modern astronomy. The ghost in the machine is no longer just a whisper. It has a name, a predicted size, and a calculated orbit. In 2016, Astronomers Konstantin Batygin and Michael Brown from Caltech published a landmark paper that presented the most compelling mathematical evidence to date for a ninth major planet in our solar system. They didn't find it with a telescope. They found it in the numbers, in the collective gravitational scream of a half-dozen distant frozen worlds. Batygin and Brown were initially skeptics. Their goal was to debunk the growing claims that a hidden planet was influencing the outer solar system. They set out to prove that the strange alignment of distant Kuiper Belt objects was just a statistical illusion, a trick of observational bias. But the more they ran the simulations, the more the data refused to cooperate. They found that the bizarre orbits of these objects, including the dwarf planet Sedna, were not only real, but were best explained by a single massive perturber. Their attempt to kill the Planet X theory ended up providing the strongest evidence for its existence. What they proposed was a world unlike any other in our solar system. They named it simply Planet 9. According to their models, Planet 9 is a behemoth with a mass between 5 and 10 times that of Earth, making it a super-Earth or a mini-Neptune. It doesn't orbit on the same flat plane as the other 8 planets. Its orbit is highly inclined, tilted by about 30 degrees and extremely elliptical or eccentric. At its closest point to the Sun, perihelion, it would be about 200 times farther from the Sun than Earth is, well beyond the Kuiper Belt. But at its farthest point, aphelion, it could swing out to a staggering 1,200 astronomical units into the dark abyss of the Oort cloud. This enormous looping orbit is the key. A single revolution around the Sun would take an immense amount of time, estimated to be somewhere between 10,000 and 20,000 Earth years. This explains why we've never seen it. For most of its journey, it is impossibly far away, an incredibly faint and slow-moving target against the backdrop of distant stars. This timescale is a significant point of divergence from Thorne's theory. His Nibiru has a 3,600-year orbit, a number that doesn't align with the 10,000 to 20,000-year orbit calculated for Planet 9. For critics, this is proof that Thorne was wrong. For believers, it opens up a more complex possibility. Are Planet 9 and Nibiru two different objects, or has Nibiru's orbit changed over time? The mathematical evidence Batygin and Brown presented is multifaceted and deeply compelling. First, there was the clustering of the 6 most distant KBOs. Planet 9's gravity naturally shepherds these smaller bodies into the aligned orbits we observe. It's the most elegant explanation for why they all point in the same direction. Second, their model actually predicted the existence of another class of KBOs, KBOs with orbits perpendicular to the plane of the solar system, tilted by 90 degrees. At the time of their paper, this was just a theoretical prediction. But since then, astronomers have actually found several of these objects, their orbits tilted in exactly the way the Planet 9 model predicted. It's like a physicist predicting the existence and properties of a new subatomic particle before the particle accelerator is even turned on. It's a powerful validation of the theory. Third, there is the mystery of the Sun's tilt. The Sun is inexplicably tilted by about 6 degrees relative to the orbital plane of the planets. It's like a spinning top that is slightly off-kilter. No one has ever been able to satisfactorily explain why. The Planet 9 model provides a beautiful solution. The immense inclined orbit of Planet 9 exerting a steady gravitational torque on the entire solar system over billions of years could have gradually pulled the orbital plane of the other planets away from the Sun's equator, creating the 6-degree tilt we see today. Planet 9 is in essence single-handedly tilting our entire solar system. So, if the evidence is so strong, why haven't we found it? The challenge is immense. Because it is so far from the sun, it reflects an infinitesimal amount of light. And being so far out, it moves incredibly slowly across the sky. Finding it is like trying to spot a single slow-moving grain of black sand on a vast, dark beach at night from miles away. Current sky surveys like the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, PanSTARRS, have scanned large portions of the sky where it might be, but have so far come up empty. However, hope is on the horizon. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile, set to become fully operational in the near future, will conduct an unprecedented survey of the southern sky. Its massive telescope will be able to detect objects far fainter and distant than anything before it. Many astronomers believe that if Planet 9 exists, the Rubin Observatory will find it within the first few years of its operation.
The conspiracy surrounding the official search for Planet 9 is rife with suspicion. One theory posits that the Bottigen and Brown announcement was a form of soft disclosure. The government and military, having known about Nibiru, Planet 9, for decades from secret projects and missions like IRAS, realized that the object's approach would soon make it discoverable by civilian astronomers. To control the narrative and prevent panic, they sanctioned a rediscovery of the planet through official academic channels. This allows them to frame it as a benign, distant object of scientific curiosity, rather than a cyclical harbinger of doom. They get to control the name, the orbital data, and the public perception, stripping it of its mythical apocalyptic baggage. The 10,000 to 20,000 year orbit might be part of this managed narrative, a deliberately inflated number to make its return seem like a distant, irrelevant problem, when in fact, its true 3,600-year orbit means it is much closer than we are being told. The scientific search for Planet 9 may not be a quest for discovery, but a carefully stage-managed piece of theater, preparing us for a truth they can no longer keep hidden. But what if the ghost in the machine isn't a planet at all? What if it's something fundamentally different? The search for Planet 9 has forced astronomers to confront alternative possibilities that are far stranger and potentially far more terrifying. One of the most compelling alternative theories is the idea of a dark star, a failed companion to our own sun. Most sun-like stars in the galaxy are not solitary. They exist in binary or multi-star systems, gravitationally bound to one or more stellar companions. Is it possible that our sun is not alone after all? This hypothetical companion is often called nemesis. It wouldn't be a bright star like the sun. Instead, it would likely be a brown dwarf, a failed star. Brown dwarfs are objects more massive than a planet like Jupiter, but not massive enough to ignite the nuclear fusion in their cores that would make them shine like a true star. They are incredibly dim, emitting most of their energy as faint infrared radiation, making them nearly impossible to detect with conventional telescopes. A brown dwarf nemesis orbiting the sun at a vast distance would have a highly elliptical orbit. For tens of thousands of years, it would be a harmless, invisible neighbor. But periodically, its orbit would bring it plunging through the Oort cloud, the immense spherical shell of trillions of icy comets surrounding our solar system. Like a shark swimming through a school of fish, its immense gravity would disrupt the stable orbits of these comets, sending a deadly shower of them hurtling toward the inner solar system. Another possibility is that Planet 9 is not a planet, but a primordial black hole. This is perhaps the most mind-bending theory of all. Primordial black holes are hypothetical microscopic black holes that would have been formed in the chaotic, ultra-dense conditions of the very first second after the Big Bang. A black hole with 5 to 10 times the mass of Earth would be no larger than a grapefruit. An object like this would be the ultimate cosmic ghost. It would emit no light, reflect no light, and be utterly invisible.
yet it would exert the exact same gravitational influence on the distant Kuiper Belt objects as a planet of the same mass. We would feel its presence, but we would never be able to see it. If a celestial object periodically returned to wreak havoc on the inner solar system, it would be seared into the collective memory of our species. And when we look at the mythological record from cultures all across the globe, cultures that had no possible contact with one another, we find exactly that, a persistent, recurring memory of a celestial destroyer. From the Colburn Bible's description of the Destroyer, a large reddish celestial body that returns at regular intervals, to the Egyptian Eye of Ra, the Greek myth of Phaethon, the biblical wormwood, and the Hopi prophecy of the blue star Kachina, the pattern is universal. A cyclical end of days initiated by a celestial event, followed by a renewal. These are not isolated stories. They are fragments of a single global memory of a recurring catastrophe. The myths speak of fire and floods, of skies falling and lands reshaping. But what does this look like through the cold, unforgiving lens of physics? If a massive planetary body were to pass through the inner solar system, its primary weapon would be gravity, an invisible force that reaches across millions of miles of empty space. The effects would be a cascade of geological and atmospheric destruction, perturbed outer planet orbits, increased meteor activity, catastrophic tidal surges, global seismic swarms, supervolcanic eruptions, magnetic field collapse, crustal displacement, and potentially a complete pole shift. This is not mythology. It is a clinical, physical description of what happens when the fundamental laws of gravity are turned into a weapon of mass destruction. The conspiracy around this terrifying science is simple and chilling. Governments know this is possible. Secret, deep underground military bases have been built as arcs to preserve a select elite, while the surface of the planet is cleansed. The information is kept secret because the truth is too terrible to accept. A threat exists that could erase civilization. Do you believe you would be told? The most dangerous truth in the world is that the answer is no. After navigating this labyrinth of ancient texts, astronomical calculations, and terrifying conspiracies, we arrive at the final question. What does the story of Nibiru truly mean? Whether it is a real planet, a brown dwarf, a primordial black hole, or a complete fabrication, the idea of Nibiru has become one of the most powerful and enduring myths of the modern age. At its core, the Nibiru myth is a story about powerlessness, cosmic loneliness, and our search for meaning in a universe that often feels cold and silent. It taps into the feeling that our civilization is careening out of control. Nibiru offers a simple, dramatic explanation for the chaos. It absolves us of responsibility. The end is not our fault. It is simply our destiny, written in the stars. The myth also tells us we are not accidents. We were created. We have a purpose. Our creators are still out there. This narrative re-enchants the universe, filling the silent void with gods, giants, and epic dramas. So is Nibiru coming? In a literal sense, the evidence remains inconclusive. But in a metaphorical sense, Nibiru is already here. It is the anxiety of our age, the feeling that we are on the brink of a profound transformation we cannot control. Whether a planet appears in the sky or not, the myth itself is a force of nature, a gravitational pull on our collective imagination, forcing us to look up at the heavens and question everything we thought we knew about who we are and where we are going. The search for Nibiru is, and always has been, a search for ourselves. If you're still here, you're exactly the kind of person I make these deep dives for. In the next episode, we're going even darker, exploring the Anunnaki bloodlines, elite cults, and the hidden rituals that may connect ancient astronauts to modern power structures. Click the video on your screen now, and I'll meet you there. This journey is just beginning.